Since the release of iPadOS 26, the iPad Pro has become a very considerable choice when buying an Apple computer. Now, the issue is that most people are confused between this, the iPad Pro M4, and the MacBook Air. And a lot of people don't realize some nitty-gritties that are very important to consider when making this change. And well, that is exactly why I'm here. Now, truth be told, the idea for this video came from one of the subscribers that I recently got. And this subscriber, he had this issue where he's a medical student. He wanted to know if he should go for a MacBook Air or should he buy the iPad Pro. And even though, the choice is very subjective, there are certain things that are facts and they cannot be changed. And those things, if we discuss, you'll have a very clear idea on what you should buy for yourself, right? First, let's talk price. A lot of people at the start are going to say that the iPad Pro makes a lot more sense because, you get the latest processor, it's a very, it's a touch-enabled display, you get mini LED, all of that is completely fine. But you're missing out on the part where you also have to buy the Magic Keyboard. Now, the iPad Pro 11-inch in India is available for 99,000. With discounts and all, you can get it for 90,000 approximately. And after that, the Magic Keyboard costs 30,000. So you have to spend another 30,000 in buying a Magic Keyboard. So your tally now has gone to about 1.2 lakhs. In 1.2 lakhs, you can get the 15-inch version of the MacBook, and not even the base version, but rather the upgraded storage version, right? So you need to consider that also. So pricing wise, what seems like, it's much more value may not make a lot of sense. So currently with all the discounts, so if you go to Vijay Sales or you go to Reliance Digital or you go on Amazon, you're going to get the MacBook Air M4 for 80,000. So already you have that 10,000 gap. If you're buying from apple.com, you're not going to get this, but you'd rather get a pair of AirPods free. So it runs the same way. Now, when you talk about actual functionality, that is where things differ a lot. And you go from a person to person. Firstly, when you talk about an iPad, the added functionality of interfacing with the UI changes. So to give you a fair bit of idea, you can interact with the display of iPad, you can touch things, you can write on the screen. That is something which you cannot do on a MacBook. And honestly, you're not expected to do on a MacBook, right? That's not its use case. Now, when you talk about installing apps that you directly download from the internet, for example, Final Cut has a trial version for Mac. And if you download this image, you can use the trial version for 90 days, right? Full features. No feature is, not available. You can use Final Cut Pro for free for 90 days using this image file. Now, the issue is, you cannot do this for iPad. You have to download this rather from the App Store. And the issue occurs when you realize that for taking a trial of any of these apps, firstly you have to give your credit card or UPI address. And after that, it's not for that long. You're going to get like 7 days of free trial. So there's a lot of difference in how the app ecosystem functions. In Mac, you can download apps from App Store. That is a possibility. You can download them from different websites. You can do a lot of these things which you cannot do on an iPad. Another very persistent issue, even with iPadOS 26, is scaling of websites. Now, a lot of people assume that, okay, I do not use any tools which require me to download the specific apps, or I have web replacements for these apps. What happens is there are scaling issues on iPad. So if you open Google Sheets on iPad and you try to use it, you'll not be able to. You'll not be able to use it the same way that you do on macOS or Windows, right? When you click and you directly edit, that is not possible. Cell selection is very different on iPad as compared to MacBooks. And the scaling, it's odd. So if you have a big sheet, you'll not be able to access it properly. And that is where you start seeing the limitation of iPadOS, right? Moreover, yes, there are a lot of Pro apps available on the iPad, but all these lack basic functionalities like using templates, having custom folders, changing custom folders, adding special templates from Envato, and so on and so forth. This is not something you can do on these pro apps on your iPad, which you can do on your MacBook. Notwithstanding that, if you do get an iPad, like I was using this 11-inch iPad as my daily driver computer, I started realizing the small cramped up space was irritating me. Yes, it's very portable. Yes, it's very light, but it's very irritating to keep working in this cramped up space, because today we're moving to a point where multitasking has become the norm. And yes, Apple has moved to multitasking with their multi-windows now available on iPadOS 26. But when you look at it as your daily driver, it's going to be a problem. So you are but obviously going to connect it to your monitor, right? Now this is where another very weird quirk of the iPad comes in. So your iPad screen cannot be off when you're connecting the iPad to the monitor, right? It does not have the clamshell mode that Mac does. And Mac does not allow being connected to a monitor without a power source. That's also a very weird bug, but whatever, right? So that is there, and you cannot mirror the you can only mirror the iPad screen or extend the iPad screen, right? Moreover, when you mirror the iPad screen, the resolution changes. So if you have a big monitor, you're going to see very pixelated screen and a bad ratio, which I still don't get why is the case. Now, does that mean the iPad does not qualify as a work computer or a daily driver computer for most people? That's not true, right? It depends on your use case. Now, if you are someone who does a lot of graphic design and photo editing, I think the iPad would make for an excellent device. And if you're alternate work, right? So all the people who are in creative professions, including me, generally they have two sets of things they need to do. One is their creative tasks, for which they have very dedicated machines where they do all these creative tasks. The second set of tasks are those, typical office tasks, pulling in spreadsheets, making Word documents, those things. And I think those things are doable, if not with the same kind of speed you would have on macOS, but they're doable. The greatest benefit you get from an iPad is being able to interface with the screen with the Apple Pencil and allowing you to, have like a very, very close connect with the designs you're creating, with the kind of work you're doing. That's really great. Even for video editors, I feel the iPad Pro is a really, really great thing. Firstly, if you are someone who edits his own videos as well as shoots their own videos, you can use the iPad screen as a monitor, which is a great thing. Moreover, the iPad screen is extremely color accurate. So if you are going to do color grading, the iPad is the best that there is, right? But if you don't fall into these categories, if you're someone who does a lot of coding or someone whose majority of time goes into management, like Notion software, like creating big spreadsheets, doing a lot of calculations, a lot of time is being spent looking at the screen and doing very administrative level tasks, the iPad doesn't really serve you the kind of purpose. And it's better to go for a MacBook, because in one set you get your screen, you get your keyboard, you get your trackpad. All of it is really nice. And another thing about the iPad is, if you, let's say, even get the Magic Keyboard that is with the iPad, you're not going to have the experience you have on a MacBook. A lot of people I've seen go into the iPad ecosystem expecting a MacBook-like experience, and the hardware also is not built that way. So if you do buy a Magic Keyboard, you're going to realize that it's very small. It does not give you the very satisfying feel when doing those touch gestures, which is very important, when multitasking. So if you are someone who's in a very, very creative field, I feel the iPad will serve your purpose. But honestly, if you talk about value proposition as well, for a normal person, does buying the iPad Pro as your daily driver make a lot of sense? No, not really. If you're someone who's going to take a lot of notes, who's going to do a lot of designing, then the iPad does make sense for you. If not, most people should still prefer the MacBook, because let's face it, currently, as surprising as it may sound, the MacBook Air M4 is probably the most value for money laptop in the market. Whether you compare it to Windows, whether you compare it to Mac or Apple devices, it is the most value for money device that Apple sells right now. So why don't you check the description out? I have given you the links there. Now these are affiliate links, but obviously, and You don't have to pay extra. I might get something. So if that is something you want to do, you can do. But yes, for most people, the larger audience, buying an iPad as your daily driver does not make a lot of sense. And I'm talking about the iPad Pro here. And if you're getting the normal iPad and then getting the keyboard, might as well get a MacBook. It's much better, much easier, and would serve you for a longer period of time. That's all for today, guys. Thank you. See you in the next one.